Here we are back for session 2, and with this session what we're going to do is we're going to use Adobe Photoshop to open up the raw unedited image and go back and review it, potentially make color corrections, and then resave this one as an edited image with Adobe Photoshop. As a reminder, we always want to keep our raw image. I like to keep mine on my PC in a separate file to make sure I don't edit it or alter it in any way. Because remember, this is the file that we were able to extract the metadata information from earlier. If you go back and open this file in Adobe, you make edits, you make corrections with it, you may destroy that data within that image on there. So here I am opening up my original raw image. As we can see, it's got a sepia tone color to it, which again is a brown coloration. We can see the light streak going across the upper left hand corner, and barely visible over here on the right side is the other object, or I should say the string of lights that the witness also observed. To make color corrections in this one, and I understand a number of you may not have Adobe Photoshop, and by the way, Adobe Photoshop is a relatively expensive program. I fully understand if a lot of you do not have it available out there. I just happen to have an advantage since I'm in education. I do get a lot of software to use for educational prices on there. With this particular version on here, this is Adobe 6. I'm going to go back, look at my image here very briefly. I'm going to go ahead and magnify. As I've magnified, you can see also the brilliance of the stars coming up. I'm going to scroll around so we can come up and look at that streak of light I mentioned earlier on here. And as I magnify this even more in Adobe, in the last video presentation I mentioned about the fact that the light line had a little squiggly effect to it and then stabilized. This is my impression. The impression I have on this one is the individual push the shutter. This is a very small amount of camera shake before it's stabilized. And again, my belief is that the witness, without even looking at the CMS report or contacting him, had the camera attached to a tripod to get this much stability over an 8-second exposure. Another thing you can do along with this, I did not mention this in the last video on there, but this exposure was 8 seconds long. If you were to go back, and this is very, very crude, measure the length of the line on that screen. In this case, my image on the screen is roughly about 9.5 inches long. If I divide it up by 8, that would tell me that roughly a little over each inch would be 1 second. If I go back and measure that squiggly line from the point where it starts jerking around a little bit till it stabilizes, we've got a time frame, and this is very, very crude, very rough, of roughly about 3/4 a second before that camera kind of stabilized on top of the tripod. I'm going to go and zoom back out and look at the image on the other side under magnification. And this is again the lighting effect that we have going from top to bottom. I don't know how well you'll be able to tell on the resolution on your monitor, but I can see that there's like a white dot here, white dot here, white, 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 white. And one of the things I look at is that these two lights appear to match these two, and the time between them, in other words the space between them I should say, is relatively consistent on here. We also happen to have a red light intermixed that appears at roughly the same frequency on there apart. That's on, 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 on. Again, using a similar type of an idea, if we're to measure from the this one here, this light, the very lower portion of the screen, up to the final one that we'd see in the string. And again, not going diagonally this way, but picking up the first light here and picking up the same identical light in the same location here. And if you're dividing that down by 8, again, that would be roughly the time frame between each of these lights. It appears what we have is we have something blinking off and on. It's very possibly a wingtip marker lights on an aircraft. We've got the outer wing lights. We also, in this case, have the red light, which is strobing more towards the center of the craft. When I look at this also, I see a somewhat opaque coloration running between all of them. Again, it's kind of difficult to tell in this photograph. This could be additional lights on the aircraft as it goes across. This could be a reflection off the aircraft. It could be any number of things causing that type of a transparent type image on there. Going back out, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to go back and save my image. Before I do anything else, I'm saving this as a image edited with Adobe Photoshop. The other thing I also do is I'm going to make a note in the file name, and I'm placing it right at the very beginning that this image is edited. That way I don't disturb my raw image again. Once I save the image, what I'm going to do next is come back and then go back and potentially view the colors to see if they need corrected on there. I'm going to go up to my pull down menus up above on the top of the screen, and in this case, under image, we've got adjustments for automatic tone, automatic contrast, and automatic color. I'm going to go back first, and for no particular reason, I'm going to go back to automatic color. And you can see to begin with, the minute I chose automatic color, how drastically in this case that image changed. Zooming back out, we see now that we've got more of a reddish color, almost like a late sunset type of appearance, I guess you could say. And when I remember the metadata information showed that the photograph was taken on July 6th of 2010 at 11:20 p.m., which would be well after sunset. But there may be something else in this case causing that type of a coloration of the sky. I'm going to also go back and choose, in this case, automatic contrast and also automatic tone. Now there we can see that a major difference was made with the automatic tone. Again, we're getting more of a blue coloration in the sky, a light blue. But again, this is very, very deceiving because this photograph was taken at supposedly about 11:20 p.m. At least that's the date that's within the photograph. Something about that date. Dates can be altered within a photograph depending on if the individual downloads them from their camera into a computer. They could potentially change the date at that time. We can now see that we've got a blue sky though. If we go back and enhance this, you can really see the stars starting to pop. We can see some graininess to the image. And if we come in, we can even see how much more brilliant that streak of light is going across the screen on there that we were talking about earlier. Zooming out to full screen. This is the original photograph that now has the colors enhanced and edited. I'm going to go back before I lose anything, just out of a little cautiousness here. I'm going to go back and save my edited image again. So now I've got the new updates saved within the edit. There's a number of other things you can also do with Adobe at this point if you wanted to. We may very quickly go back and cut out these portions right here and save these as enhancements separately. Another thing we're going to do is just very briefly, we're going to go back and look at the file information. The file information on here has a number of tabs, but the tab that I've got mine preset to go to is camera data. Again, this goes back and confirms that the witness was using a Canon camera, the model number, the resolution they had the image set to, the lens, the aperture settings. Here again are ISO speeds, and also our exposure times on here. This is much briefer as far as information it displays. To go back next, and I'm going to go ahead and cut, or I should say cut copy, this image, and I'm going to create a new file for my own reference on here. And what it is, I just pasted that little cutout only. I'm going to go back and do a save as. We're going to go back and save this image then. I'm saving the image as an edit in the upper left hand corner. I'm going to make sure I put this in the same folder as the other image on there. Let's just close this one down. We're going to go back also and window this portion up here. We're going to go back and copy this image up here. We're going to create a new image, paste that in, and while we're here, we're going to take and label this one. So what I've done is I've gone back and cut the image on both the upper right and left hand corners, saving these as separate files. So I've got one file of the upper right hand corner, another one of the upper left hand corner, and the entire image as a whole. This is what I'm going to need for my next step then. So far what we've done is we've gone back and used EXF Reader to extract the metadata information from the original raw image. I went back and used Adobe PhotoShop to open up the raw image, resaved it as a new file, and the process went in and enhanced the colorations of it. Used auto settings on both the contrast, the color, and the tone. Once I enhanced the image, I went back next and then saved each of the areas in question as enhanced images also on there, so I can look at those without having to zoom in and zoom out all the time as my next step. Going forward, what we're going to do after this is we're going to go back then and compare the information within the CMS report back to the metadata information, and also go back and compare it to the enhanced images to Adobe Photoshop then. Again, that's going to be our next step. That'll be in video 3. Thank you.